I've been working with creativity since '91. So, and in that time, I've been focused mostly on enabling people to become more creative by helping them to see the kind of psychological issues behind barriers to creativity, if putting it like that, sort of the mindsets, and also offering them tools and processes to help them become more creative. So I've been working in that field, and in a way that's bounded in terms of creativity. There is a much broader field, I believe, around creativity out there, and this may be the sort of holistic perspective that you're suggesting. I'm not saying I don't, I'm not interested in that, but I think my focus, particularly in coaching and facilitating, has been in the more bounded, practical sense of creativity.
And you talk about barriers to creativity. What are the psychological barriers?
Oh, that's a good one. I think things like our beliefs, our attitudes, mindsets. Is that you mentioned mindsets earlier? Mindsets is a good one, because we can look at things like take the mindset around, I've forgotten the terms now, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset that I think Carol Dweck wrote about. In a way, if you've got a mindset that is open to possibilities, that is open to change, that is open to growth, then you're going to be much more open to being creative, to try new things. If you have a fixed mindset which says, okay, this is you know, this is it, this is what I have, this is what I'm capable of, and then you're going to shut yourself down in terms of possibilities. So I think that kind of mindset. Often people have, I mean, one of my favorite phrases is this yes, but. I mean, I don't mean favorite in terms of I like using it. It's one of the phrases I like to challenge with people, in that some people have a very negative mindset, where whenever they're confronted with something new or a new possibility, they have a tendency to say either no straight away or yes, but. Yes, but we tried that before, or yes, but that won't work here, or you know, yes, but. So that kind of mindset, that kind of negative mindset, is certainly, it not just shuts yourself down, but it shuts other people down around you.
And that again is a very philosophical question, because this difference between the fixed versus the growth mindset, are they innate character traits? Because if they are innate character traits, then is it ethical to try and change a person's mindset? Because the reason I say it's a philosophical question is because there are a lot of philosophers who advocate pessimism, cynicism, because those kind of, you know, what we may call negative thinking, negative beliefs, whatever, that can result in a person being able to survive traumas because they were expecting the worst and they got the worst and they were prepared for it.
An interesting discussion, actually. Where can I start on that one? I think there's two things. the two things I'd like to kind of follow up through on that one. The first one was, is it innate? Now, I studied psychology. I'm a member of the British Psychological Society. I'm not a psychologist in the way that the British Psychological Society terms a psychologist, but I've taught it and I've studied it. I believe the jury is still out on personality, and there's been so much study of it over the years. My personal belief is that our personality is a mix of innate, sort of genetic, if you like, and our upbringing. So to some extent, it could be that the attitude, well, I do believe that the attitudes and the mindsets we develop are a mix of that. So there may be some genetic trait there. However, the way that we're brought up, our experiences, our socialization, all help us to develop in the direction that we develop in. So that's the first thing. I don't think we can say anything is innate. So it's like the same with creativity. I don't believe that you're born a creative person or not a creative person. I believe that
have a natural tendency to be introvert, others are naturally extrovert. And I think that, you know, especially in some societies, there's a kind of a preference towards the extrovert personality because they seem to be more outgoing, they tend to be more popular, and the introverts sometimes make attempts to try and be extroverts, but they're not naturally extroverts. And you know, it's similar to what you say about the mindset, the growth versus the fixed mindset. For me, it's similar to those traits of extroversion and introversion.
Again, it's an interesting discussion on introversion, extroversion, because I think context is very important there. Over the years, I've noticed, just in myself, I've noticed that there are times when I've been quite high on the extroversion scale, and there are other times when I've been fairly low on it. And I think the context within which I was working or socializing had a big influence there. If I were to say innately, am I extrovert or introvert? I don't think there's an answer to that. I think that it is, we do change our personality to some extent. I mean, I know that psychology would say that it's fairly enduring, but I do think it changes, and I do think context can change that. Socialization, society, and you're right, society somehow, I don't know whether it's values, but society somehow rewards extroverts more because they get heard. And it's actually something that we cover in the book that we're just about to publish, because when you're looking at enabling people to be creative, then the extroverts often, you know, you think about something simple like a brainstorming exercise, the extroverts often hold court, and it's very hard for the introverts to get heard. And what I always recommend people do is to build in techniques and processes where the introverts can have their say. But coming back to the innate thing, again, I don't know. It's still, I don't think anybody has been able to say definitively this is innate and that's a result of your upbringing.
Just a tendency, you know, towards being introvert, or a tendency towards having a fixed mindset. If that's a natural tendency, then is it ethical to manipulate that and to try and make us more, you know, like favor a growth mindset over a fixed mindset?
I don't think it's about manipulating. I think it's about just, I wouldn't recommend manipulating anybody into doing anything. However, if I were I spent a long time in education, and in education, if I was faced with a student who was telling me that they couldn't go any further, or if I'm coaching somebody that's starting to put limits and has limiting beliefs, then I would feel that it was important to challenge them a little bit on what possibilities they might have out there that they hadn't considered. Now, I don't think that's manipulating, because they can say, no, that's fine, I'm happy with where I'm at, or I'm not happy. So I don't think it's about manipulating. It's about maybe encouraging people to open up to some possibilities.
And then the thing about pessimism, you know, as I said earlier, philosophers think of pessimism as a way of self-protection, you know. In business, we can think about the best case scenario and the worst case scenario, and some people will have a tendency to focus on the worst case scenario because that will protect them from adversity.
Sure, it will. You know, you could have a very limited life if you always take the worst case scenario, because you will end up having a lot of self-fulfilling prophecy. I think I think there's actually an interesting point, though, that you've got there, in that you can be over optimistic, and I wouldn't advocate that either. I think there are some people now challenging the positivity movement, because being positive all the time, being optimistic all the time, is a little bit unrealistic. And I think that we do need that sense of realism. And I think what you're saying is important there, that by holding, having some pessimism or some concerns about the future, that's important, because we don't optimistically, we don't want to sort of ride into the sunset optimistically thinking everything's going to work out all right. What we need to be able to do is have a realistic view, then try and see how we can overcome that. What can we do to improve that? What can we do to develop that so that it doesn't end up as pessimistic as we want? You know, we can take something big. I mean, looking at climate change, which is such a huge issue, we can be, and I'm totally pessimistic at times about that. We can, if we stayed with our pessimism, we could get stuck on not doing anything. What we need to do is to have a realistic view of, yeah, the situation is pretty awful. What could we do? What opportunities are there for us to work with what we have got in order to not meet that pessimistic future? Do you see what I mean there? It's so for me, creativity is about the saying, okay, so I work a lot with visioning. So what could we do? You know, here we are now, stuck in this pessimistic viewpoint. What possibilities are there in the future for us, and how could we get there? And then we look at things kind of realistically, but with a little bit more of an open vision. And that, I suppose that's where I stand on that. I think that when people start expressing their emotions, because a lot of art is around expressing your emotion, then that emotion it comes in all sorts of different colors. So, you know, that's true. But I don't think you have to be that, you know, I don't think all art is born from, and I wouldn't say I'm an artist. So I'm not sort of really talking from the position of being an artist. However, you know, not all good art comes from the unhappy, depressed soul in the attic and who's struggling. There's a lot of art comes from people who are happy and who just want to share good emotions. And that sounds very blithe, actually. but I think emotions can be both happy. You know, there's a whole range of emotions that can be expressed through art. But I don't want to go. You know, I don't teach art. I don't get involved in art per se. I'm interested in creativity from almost from a very practical viewpoint of how you can just gently push people's barriers so that they're a little bit open to see the world a little bit more differently. Yeah. And then problem solving and areas like that, of course, then come into it. I've been recently looking at or revisiting people like Michael Curtin. I don't know whether you've come across his adapter innovator scale, but he talked about, I mean, it's kind of creativity in relationship to innovation, but that there is a sort of scale of the adapter who takes ideas that are already in existence and changes them, and sometimes a little bit. And then at the other end of the scale is the innovator who comes up with totally radical ideas. And Curtin saw both of those, or all the way along that scale, as being creative. And I go with that. So, you know, for example, I would say I'm being creative when I can roughly take a menu or that I want to follow, say a recipe that I want to follow, and adapt it a little bit. Now, that's not being, you know, I'm not going to end up as a Michelin guide chef by doing that. I'm just being a little bit creative in my own way. And there's a lot of people around for whom creativity is that. It's adapting a little bit, trying something new, playing with color, taking photographs, playing with different techniques. On the other end, there are the wholly innovative people who come up with the ideas that are totally new. You know, I suppose the ideas like the Google Glass or glasses, and And we've had lots of those innovations, obviously, over the years. But they're probably fewer and far between than the adaptive creatives.
Right.
So I would say in art, I mean, if I was thinking of this morning, I don't know why I was thinking of this, but I was thinking about Cézanne. And so I'm actually going to Arles this week, not Aix, where he was painting, but he painted a lot of paintings of Mont Saint-Victoire. Now, they're not, when you look at them, they're his style, but they're not brilliantly original, but they're nice paintings. And he worked and worked and worked with the color, with his technique, and he worked the same thing over and over again. And a lot of artists do that. So it's not, in a way, that's taking ideas and adapting them till you get something that is original, but it's not maybe mind-blowing original, as some people would say. Perhaps not like Picasso's original ideas, which were perhaps more mind-blowing. So I think art has that range as well. But I do have to, if we start defining creativity as being about original ideas, we're also limiting it, because there aren't many original ideas to be had, in a way, out there. You know, if we're looking at, I work with creativity and leaders and in business, and it's not necessarily that they're wanting the next original idea. They want to be able to work more effectively, more better, maybe try something different, but it doesn't have to be totally original. I would also question whether it has to, creativity for itself, does it has to have a value? I think when it becomes innovation, it has to have a value. I think if you're talking about, so we're talking about business, people can come up with very many creative ideas that never get very far, but they might eventually be picked up and become something different when it becomes innovation. So I kind of think that the benefit, the side of creativity that has to have a benefit and a value, we might call that innovation.